As you know, I had the Dodge Cummins on this channel a few times, and unfortunately, it's no longer with us. It is RIP. It was involved in a wreck, and it was actually totaled. So here's some pictures of the damage that it sustained, and it was in 1998 with about 330,000 miles, and I'm going to miss that truck. So here's the new to us replacement truck. It is a 2006 Chevy Silverado 1500 LT trim with the 5.3 liter V8. Just a quick walk around on what I think was a good deal on this truck. Just look at Facebook Marketplace and you'll see what they're listing for. I paid a lot less. Overall, the truck is in pretty good shape for being 17 years old. The body's straight, not a whole lot of dings, has a few rust spots that can easily be fixed. Looking at the inside of the cab, it looks pretty good. The driver's seat bolster isn't tore to pieces and it's intact. The rest of the seats are decent, and so is the carpet. The visors have some loose material, but the headliner's in good shape too. Some of the things that are wrong with this is the radio doesn't work. The center console lid is broken at the hinge, so that'll need fixing. Apparently, that's a common thing on these GMT 800 trucks. Other than that, the heater works, the AC works, everything else works. As with anything, when I checked it out, test drove it, everything was great. But as soon as I got it home, after about a 70-mile drive, the check engine light came on. So, more content for this channel. So I busted out this OBD2 reader, the P0301 for misfires and the P0327 and P0332 knock sensor circuit low voltage. So I got to check those out. After disconnecting the battery, I pulled the spark plug out of cylinder 1. That's what it looks like. I mean, it doesn't look bad. What I'll do next is pull off the ignition coil off cylinder 1 and swap it with the ignition coil on cylinder 3 to see if it's the ignition coil that's failed. First, I loosen up the plastic clamp on this wiring harness with a screwdriver so I can move it out of the way to get better access. The bolts on the ignition coils are 10 millimeters, and I had to take the bracket off that holds the junction box to the alternator, which is also 10 millimeters, and the ground strap's attached to one of the bolts that secures to the bracket. This way I have more room. I went ahead and removed the ignition coils for cylinder 1 and 3 to swap them. I've got everything buttoned up and do a little test drive and see what happens. Didn't even make the test drive. Just cranked her up and sounded awful. So what I'm going to do is replace the ignition coils, the spark plugs, and the spark plug wires to rule all of that out. If this is the second time you've seen one of my videos, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I went to my local auto parts store and bought some OEM spark plugs because I couldn't find what I needed on Amazon. Here I bought some replacement aftermarket ignition coils off Amazon, and it came with new spark plug wires. So here we go. As before, you'll need a ratchet, 10 millimeter socket to remove the bolts, and a 5/8 spark plug socket. You may need some extensions and a universal joint to reach the spark plugs. Because I'm replacing everything, I decided to remove all the spark plug wires first, just to get them out of the way. Since the ignition coils were just above the spark plugs, it wasn't rocket science to figure out which wires went where. I started removing the ignition coil at the back of the engine first and worked my way towards the front so that it got easier. I call that job satisfaction. By the way, if you're using an electric ratchet like I am, you can loosen the bolt by using the electric ratchet like a regular ratchet without using the trigger. So once the bolt is loose enough, you can then pull the trigger to zip them out. Pulling the trigger on a tight bolt will not loosen it. Ask me how I know. All the ignition coils are the same, so it didn't matter where I put them. I started all the bolts by hand so I don't cross-thread them, and finished tightening them with the electric ratchet. You don't want to over-tighten the ignition coil bolts. The torque specs are 71 inch-pounds or 8 Newton meters, which isn't a whole lot. If you don't have a torque wrench, after you get the bolt snug with your socket, give it a quarter or half turn more and you'll be fine. I removed and replaced one spark plug at a time, checking the condition of each old spark plug as well as the gap. I had already confirmed the gap on all the new spark plugs, and they were spot on at 0.040 inches. I also made sure to put dielectric grease into the ends of the spark plug wire boots to prevent moisture from getting into the spark plugs and the ignition coils. Just make sure you feel the click on each end of the spark plug wire boot when connecting to the spark plugs and ignition coils, and you're golden. I made sure to reinstall the bracket for the junction box to the alternator and secured the wiring harness back into the plastic clip. Driver's side is done, and the passenger side is not really that different, though I completed that off camera. Burn like a kitten. Here are the spark plugs for cylinders 1, 3, 5, 7, 2, 4, 6, and 8. They don't look too bad. I mean, cylinder 3 was one of the worser ones, and possibly cylinder 4. So I'm thinking it was the ignition coils or possibly the spark plug wires. So now all the work is done. The truck is running fine, so no more misfire codes. The codes for the knock sensor is still there because I haven't fixed that problem, but I will do a video on that down the road. But for the time being, there's no trouble. It doesn't hurt the truck with those codes up right now. So I will have more content coming up with other repairs and upgrades and replacements and things like that. So stay tuned. But appreciate it, and until next time, see ya.